Life's Tough, but Superheroes Are Tougher. A podcast about real-life superheroes in the entertainment industry with your host, Stephen Shamus.
This episode is brought to you by the Podcast Services Division at Life's Tough Media. Having your own podcast allows you to creatively reach all types of audiences, from clients to prospects, to your most loyal membership base. And by utilizing studio affiliates located around the world, coupled with quality remote recording capabilities, Life's Tough Media makes having a corporate podcast easier than ever before. Contact us for a no-obligation consultation at info@lifestuff.com or visit lifestuff.com to learn more.
All right, welcome everybody to the new show of Life's Tough, Superheroes Are Tougher. We're here with Alex, my sidekick. Alex,
Hello.
Good to see you. And Billy Martin, of course, a Marvel artist, DC artist, Good Charlotte lead guitarist. We've known Billy for probably 6 or 7 years now, right? Yes. Something like that. Billy and I first met in Atlanta back in 2014. And I remember that meeting, Billy, because I remember first reaching out to you to come to the show. And it's funny, like, I didn't really know that you were a guitarist at the time. I actually just loved your artwork. And I was like, hey, can you come to our show? So talk a little bit about
I mean, that's the best for me. Like when you have two things that you're passionate about, you assume that someone learns about one before the other. And then, but obviously most people know me from Good Charlotte, but when people come, you know, especially at your shows, like at Comic-Cons, people will be walking by and they're looking at my art and they're like, man, this stuff's really good. I like it. And they start talking. And then somebody walks by with like a Good Charlotte. I'm like, hey, can you sign my CD? And they're sitting there looking back and forth like, why is he signing a Good Charlotte CD? And they're like, wait, are you in Good Charlotte? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I had no idea. And I'm like, yes,
right.
That, you know, so when the art speaks for itself, that makes me feel really proud. So yeah, that and I had no idea. I assumed you invited me to the show because you figured, hey, he's in a band, you know, he's got an audience. It will bring something to the show, but no, you know, and there you go. Yeah. Lifelong friendship after that, right?
Yeah.
Classic
Steven move. Look, you know what? I would go through the catalog, like every single page, every single month, looking for something new. You know, our shows, even from the beginning of time, Robert Kirkman was discovered in our Artist Alley. Our shows primarily were focused on discovery, especially when it came to the Artist Alley area. How do we find the new talent, the guys that are doing something that's a little bit different, that's a little bit unique, that's not the same stuff that you're seeing? And one thing that I had said to Billy at the time, and this was kind of funny, we had talked about it, is I said to him, I said, your work reminds me of Humberto Ramos. And you took that as the biggest compliment in the world because you love Humberto.
I think he's the best comic book artist out there. You know,
right.
He's amazing.
No arguments for me.
Yeah. So that was an interesting start. So let's talk a little bit about your work. And you know, so when you're in the band, you're in Good Charlotte, you're part of a collaborative process. You're working in a studio, you're on stage together. With comic books, it's a little bit different because the writer might be somewhere else, the editor might be somewhere else, the inker and somewhere else, and you're kind of working in your studio at home. In terms of working on both, what are the sort of the similarities of working in a rock band and working on a comic book collaboratively, and sort of what are some of the differences that you've seen?
There definitely are some similarities. I think for one, just in general, people think, oh, how do you do art and music? You know, like it's hard enough to figure out one or the other. But for me, I feel like it kind of comes from the same place because there is no template for drawing and there is no template for making music. With some jobs, it's like, here's this, do this, A gets you to B, B to that's the results. But with something creative, like the very first idea, you have to pull it out of thin air, whether it's a note or a rhythm or an image you see in your head. There is no, like, you can't like use something to help that. You just like start, you put the pencil down, you start and you see what comes out. But, you know, or with music, you just start playing and like hope something comes out. And I think there's a similarity in the creative aspect of that. But you're right in the fact that with a band, you're 1/5, you know, in Good Charlotte's case, I'm a 1/5 member. So like, the end outcome is not going to sound exactly like you think because you are bringing your 2 cents and someone else brings their 2 cents. And sometimes that's the magic is you have no idea what, oh, his idea mixed with my idea. I would have never thought about that. And then that's when something really special comes out. And same with comics, like often, I mean, I do like pencil, ink, and color most of my own work. But when I work for Marvel, Marvel has a very specific look. You know, Marvel wants to keep things looking Marvel. So I never color my Marvel work. I'll draw it and I'll ink it and someone else will come in and color it. So that's another example of I'm assuming, okay, well, I see this with like a red sky and it's going to be kind of dark and this, and then you come back and they've got this like bright yellow sky with like hot pink highlights everywhere. I'm like, oh, that's nothing like I imagined it, but it's amazing. It's better than I could imagine it because they've got top tier talent coloring. So there is a similarity in that you give and take a little bit, and it's a collaborative process. But you learn that way too. That's some of the best stuff I learned is when you're working on a song and somebody else in the band brings an idea and you think, oh, that's great. I would have never thought about that. I have to remember that next time I'm working on something. I like that trick. Or when someone does something, colors over your art, and you think, okay, next time I color my something, I'm gonna use something I learned from this in my own stuff. So collaboration, for me, it's like the best way to learn something.
Right. Now in the comic book world, the penciler, the original artist, the guy who has the blank page that puts the actual first pencil to the page, gets the glory, right? They're the quarterback of the NFL team. They get all the glory. That's just kind of it, is because the idea originates in their brain. And part of some of the things that we've talked about over the years is, having that unique, distinct style where when I see a Billy Martin piece, you can tell that it's a Billy Martin piece, right? Just like your music, you can tell that it's a Good Charlotte piece as soon as you hear the riffs and as soon as you hear the music play on the radio, you hear the first few chords, you know that it's a song. So talk a little bit about, how you sort of perceive your artwork, how you want people to look at your artwork, and how people sort of like judge you, like when you're at the shows, when people are walking by, like, how do you view yourself? How do you think people view you? Because remember, you're the quarterback. You're the guy. I remember talking to Joe Casada years ago, and he would tell me, it's like, I said to him, why are the pencilers getting all the glory? He said, because you have a blank page and you have to put down the pencils on that blank page, and you have to live with whatever the end result is of that. You're going to be judged on that. So how do you feel about that? And how do you look at that?
Yeah, and that's funny how much that pertains to music too. Because in Good Charlotte, I'm not the quarterback. I'm the colorist. You know what I mean? In Good Charlotte, Benji and Joel are the quarterback because, they are telling stories. They like the song develops about what, as a lyricist, what they want to sing the song about. They're the ones who come up with, the original concept. There's sometimes where I'll throw them a piece of music. I'm like, hey, I wrote this, and they'll write lyrics. But 90% of our songs, it's like them coming up with a story they want to tell, and they start with a basic idea. And then I would add lead guitars over top, or keyboards, or like something. Like my job, I feel like I'm like the colorist. I paint, they take their song and I paint it and I make it pretty and I make it really nice by adding to it. But then on the art side, it's the opposite, like I am the quarterback for when I'm doing comic books. I start with my idea and other people kind of add to it. So it's fun seeing both sides of it. But as far as style, man, style is so hard. Every artist is chasing style. I'm still chasing style. I mean, I'm always thinking, ooh, should I try something different? Am I drawing wrong? Or so I have a very animated, very sort of cartoony style. I grew up, watching Disney. I always thought, well, I want to animate for Disney, or I want to draw cartoons, but I also loved comic books. So I've tried to find like a really fine line. I want my stuff to appeal to animation fans and comic book fans. It's not super gritty. It's not super detailed like comics, but it's also not like super like baby soft, cute cartoons, like somewhere in the middle, which is where I really try to land. But I'll be at a Comic-Con and I'm sitting there and I'm doing good. And I'm selling lots of stuff and meeting fans. And then I've got Andy Park next to me, who's like designed for the Marvel Studios.
Yeah.
His line is like down the street.
I know.
And I'm whispering to my wife, my wife comes to all the conventions, and you guys both know Lindsay, and so she's sitting next to me. And the best thing about Lindsay is like, she does not care about comics at all. Like she doesn't right. Like watch the movie. She does, like, to her, it's just nerds, everywhere nerds, but she loves me and she supports me and lets me do these things. But, so I'm whispering to her the whole time, I got to stop drawing cartoon stuff. I got to draw as realistic as possible. I need to get better, and I'm like, look at his line, and like, so like people go through that stuff. Every comic book artist thinks, oh, I've got to do what he's doing because he's selling better than me. And I'm talking, and Andy was super nice. He was, we talked the whole super convention nice. And we got along, and, we've still kept in touch after the convention. And, he comes over and he starts paging through my stuff. And I'm like, oh man, he's going to be like, look at this kid guy draws like a kid or something. And he's like, man, I love this piece and I love this. And I was thinking, oh, thank you. I was like, but I'm over here thinking, how can I draw more realistic? And he was like, no way, dude. He's like, you have such a unique style. Like, this is how you draw. And he was like, like I couldn't draw like this because that's not how my brain, like you draw how your brain thinks. It's really hard to draw a different way. And it was nice to have someone as talented as him say like, don't change anything. Everything you're doing is awesome. You've got your style and stick with it, you know? And then I'm thinking like, you know, okay, hey, so he told me this, maybe I should keep drawing, you know, how I'm supposed to draw. So yeah, it's definitely a process, a learning curve as you're going on. You're always going to question that stuff. But I think like, your gut is so key. Like it's gotta, like the first thing that comes out when you draw is probably the best idea. You could erase it and keep trying and keep changing it. But like for me, that like gut first thing that comes out is probably what you were supposed to draw.
Yeah, I see that. You see that in modern comics where you can see artists from like the 80s and then what they're doing now. Like John Romita Jr., I think, is a perfect example where his stuff now is almost completely different than his original stuff, because it was like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is Marvel. This is what comic books are supposed to look like. This is what you're supposed to draw. And then when you let someone do their own, you know, ideas and their own style and like do whatever you want, then that's what you get, like John Romita, the junior artistic style of today. So yeah, it's you got to do it.
Very true. You know, and some companies aren't as into it, you know? So like with Marvel, like, yes, I would try to push my drawing a little more comic booky and a little less cartoony. Like I know who I'm drawing for, you know? So like sometimes you have to, but like I've pitched my work to DC for years and I've never got any work from DC. DC tells me every time it's too cartoony, like it's too stylized. It's not what we're looking for. So I've yet to ever get to work for DC. You know, that's definitely a bucket list thing for me, is to get in there. And I think, should I change my style so that I could get work for DC? And then I think, but I didn't change my style and I got work from Marvel. So like, you know, I think it's a lot about companies being open to trying new things, you know, like if you get really safe in your bubble and you're like, oh, this is what we do, then that's fine. But you don't have room to grow unless you try new things, you know. And I'll have to use this moment right here to give Steven a shout out, because I don't know how, okay, right. Yeah, you're like, Alex is like, oh boy, hang on, let me get some water, right?
It's fine.
No.
It's fine.
So I there's a few people I can list on one hand who I think have been like extremely influential in my career as a comic book artist. And Steven, you are one of them, because
thank you.
You asked me to do a variant cover, a Marvel cover for years ago for a Comic-Con variant. And you said, oh, I want to get Marvel to have you do it. And you reached out to Marvel and you said, hey, I want Billy to do this cover. And they said, oh, maybe not. You know, they were like, let's get someone who's already an established Marvel artist. Like that's easier. There's a lot of paperwork you have to go through to bring new artists on. We're not sure. We don't know whether we should take the risk with Billy. And I remember, Steven, you said, no, it needs to be Billy. And they were just like, okay, you know, so we went through the paperwork and all that. And I could feel that there was some reluctance there from Marvel, that they were just like, we're doing this as a favor for Steven. And I was like, man, this is really cool of them. Like, you know, we'd known each other for years, but I didn't know you that well. But it was a big deal for me that you pushed to get me there. So the first thing they give me is a 2 comic spread. It's 2 covers that connect. So not only do I have to do 1 cover, but I have to do 2 giant covers that connect into one image. And I'm on tour in Europe at the time. So I'm like out with the band, like not even home. But of course, like I travel with my laptop and my Cintiq, because I'm working everywhere I'm at. So I have this opportunity, and so I did it. It's a Doctor Strange cover and Champion. So you put them together and it's like the Champions are like around the corner and then Doctor Strange is on the other side, and it becomes an image. So I sent the image in and I was so nervous, and I sent it off, and they come back to me like, hey, this is really good. Do you want to do 6 more covers for us? And I was like, are you kidding me? You know, so it was huge for me. And from that point on, you know, I got a lot more work from Marvel. And had you not pushed to be like, no, it needs to be Billy, I may have not been working for Marvel as much as I have. So, you know, I toot the Steven Shamus horn loudly all the time. And I tell people how awesome, you know, you've been to me. So, you know, that's it. No more compliments for the rest of this podcast.
Please.
By the way, Alex, you still owe me. Alex, I think you owe me lunch or two, right?
I guess. Sure.
Well, thank you for that, Billy, and I do appreciate it. And by the way, Billy has reciprocated over the years. I've been to probably 12, 15, 20 Good Charlotte concerts with great seats, and
they're in New York, man. You're there,
and they're always fun shows. And which leads me to my next question, because you mentioned 2 things. First of all, you mentioned Lindsay comes to your shows, and like yourself, your family is sometimes with you. Lindsay's with you, of course, and then your family is always at the shows that I go to. Just like my family comes to the Ace shows, and they used to come to the Wizard shows back in the days. My brothers will come, my mom will come, my dad used to come. So, you know, obviously it feels like a family affair, which makes it more of a love of everything. And when you started, when I've been to the Good Charlotte shows, you have this very, very loyal fan base there. You know, because it does feel like a family affair. You have the Madden brothers, your family is there. I've seen Nicole there. Like we've seen the families there. And one thing that I did notice, and obviously you're familiar with it because you're at all the shows, is, you know, they ask people, is this your first time? Is this how many concerts have you been to? How many years you've been coming? And it's amazing the mix of people who have been to your shows for 20 years. It's amazing the people that have been to your shows for 10 years, 5 years. It's their first, and then you have people who have been there only for 1 year or 2 years. It might only be their first show.
Well, their first show, sure.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about like so obviously every single show I've been to, they ask that question in the crowd. Talk about the lessons that you've learned from sort of that fan interaction and what that means when you go to the Comic-Con shows, because obviously at the A shows, Alex and I know that we see a lot of the same faces. We see a lot of the same faces in the autograph area, the photo op area, the artist area, the deal area. Talk a little bit about your fan interactions at the shows. You were talking about a little bit earlier. Is it the first time? Is it the last time? And how many people are coming back, seeing you time and time again?
Yeah. I mean, it's huge. Like I like to think of my Comic-Cons as like my tours between tours. Like when I'm not, you know, doing Good Charlotte tours and meeting the fans that way, there's Comic-Con. And honestly, it's like a much more one-on-one experience for the fans to meet me at Comic-Con, because at Good Charlotte concerts, it's usually like you walk out of the, you know, the backstage at the end of the night to head to the tour bus, and there's like a line of people behind a fence or something, and they might be like yelling and pushing their stuff through the fence and trying to get you to sign it, and they want selfies, and it's chaos sometimes. You know, there's security from the place, and they're trying to like move you guys, you know, safely to the bus and keep everyone, and usually it's like a blur. You get through it. But at Comic-Cons, you know, like I'm stuck behind a table, you know, they come up to me and be like, what's up? You know, I'm like, hey. And most of the time people are really cool. You know, sometimes people come up and they get really nervous and they just stand there silently for a few minutes. And I'm like, oh, will you please say something? Like, you know, like, I'm really nice. I'm not going to bite, you know, like, let's just say hi and let's do this. But it is cool because you learn so much from fan interaction. Like that's how artists grow and really learn how to like keep a career going. Because if you're in your own head and you're only thinking like, what do I like and what do I want to do, you're maybe not necessarily going to like move along as you would. You need to know, what is your fan base? What are your fans into? What do they like? What kind of things are they looking for you to do, or what things do they not want you to do? So there is a really good opportunity at Comic-Cons for artists and writers and everyone who's there to one-on-one interact with your fans. And then, you know, you'll meet guys who are like collectors, and they're serious collectors. They come to every show and they get an expensive commission. They come to your table like right away. You sit down and they're already waiting, saying, hey, I want to get my name on your list. I know you're going to fill up. Like I'm there right away. And you got to respect those people because they're dropping, you know, $500 or something right there to get you to draw something, and they're waiting at your table. And so those people, you see repeat customers like that. For sure, make sure that if you're an artist, like learn their names, like know the people who are coming to your booth all the time. If, you know, some guy comes up and you're got your face down doing a commission and they're ready to drop $500 and you don't even look up to say hi, like they're probably going to go to the next booth. And like, I've done that where I was thinking like, oh man, there's this guy. I've been a fan of this guy my whole life. And I'm going to go over and say hi. I'm going to get up from my booth and walk over and introduce myself. And I walk up and I'm sort of standing in front of his booth, and like 2 minutes go by and he hasn't even acknowledged that I'm standing there, and his head's down in his book, or he's talking to his neighbor, and I'm kind of just waiting for him to be like, hey, and engage. And they don't say anything, like I'm going to leave. Like I'm not going to say hi, you know, because none of us are too cool. Like we're lucky that we get to do the job that we love as a living. Like if you are a professional musician, an actor, an athlete, anyone who is like in the entertainment industry, you should feel lucky that you get to do your job and appreciate the people who like what you do. So yeah, so fan interaction at Comic-Cons are huge, and it is a big part of it. And you know, and I know that's a big part of you at Ace. You know, like that's number one for you guys is, okay, we need to get the best people we can get here so that the people attending the show are gonna like have a great time. And how do we make it in the line quickly? They get their photo. They like you guys think about that, and that's why Ace came out of nowhere and just like stomped the competition, because you did everything right. You listened to the people, you knew what they wanted to do, and you made a great show. You know, and that's why you guys have everybody wanting to go to your show. So it is really simple that without the fans, nothing happens. Like it is a dead industry, and you have to remember that.
Yeah, you know, even back in the day, you know, I remember when Alex first started working with us, you know, I said to Alex, and Alex will remember this, is that I tell everybody on our staff in the staff meetings, and Alex has heard the speech more times than he cares to remember, probably 75, 80 times. I tell people, I say, listen, when you're wearing an Ace shirt, or when we were at Wizard, when you're wearing a Wizard shirt, you're the CEO of the company, right? When you're walking around, that fan that's walking around that sees that blue shirt or sees that black shirt, they're going to go up to you and they don't care. They think you're the president of the company, right? Because you can make whatever happen for them. Like if they need to be in front of us. And I've had so many people over the years tell me, thank you so much. Your staff was so nice. I was going to be late for my photo op. I didn't tell them that I knew you. I didn't tell them that I was a friend of yours. I didn't tell them that I was a cousin or whatever. And they're like, oh, I have a problem. I'm going to miss my flight. And they'll move me to the front of the line. Like, I'm like, I know, because I tell everybody. And Alex knows this. He's heard that speech 100 times, right? Alex, you're the CEO. And Alex really, in a way, is the CEO of the Artist Alley.
Of course.
Right. And most of the time.
I thought it was funny at the beginning of the show when you called him your sidekick. And I was like, oh, we know the truth, Alex. Come on, right?
Listen, Alex has been by my side for so many years.
Oh, I know he has. It wouldn't be the shows wouldn't be the same without Alex.
Wow. Listen,
if I had
many times.
Tip it. Yeah.
You're gonna laugh. I had 8 people who worked in my department at Wizard. 7 of those people came to work at Ace. 7. I remember when I hired Alex and Katie. So the only woman who didn't come work for us, it's because she had embarked on sort of a different career and had been doing very, very well. Otherwise, I'd spoken to her many, many times too. So again, it's a very much a family affair. I mean, these are people who have been in our lives for years and years. So then obviously you touched on another point where, you've done the music, you've done the art, and you're sort of a dual threat, right? And that is a very, very difficult feat to accomplish. You've seen over the years people that try, they're film stars and they try music, or they're music and they try film. And some people do succeed, obviously, but it's very, very rare. You've actually had a dual successful career, which is very, very difficult to do. So talk a little bit about like what lessons you've taken from your music career that's allowed you to embark on this new career. Because sometimes you don't really understand, like, why would a film star who does music not make it? Why would a music star who tries film not make it? You've been successful in both. What lessons have you been able to take from one to apply to the other that you think has sort of helped you be successful in 2 different areas, which is very, very difficult?
Oh, it's a good question. And there's a lot of answers, but I think that it's passion, like you have to love it. If you don't love it, you're wasting your time, people always say, oh, pick one, music or art. If you had to do one for the rest of your life. And I really can't answer the question, because I would be devastated if I had to give up one or the other. I love them both so much. So I think that's the passion. I think the problem is sometimes an actor comes in and says, oh, I'm going to make a comic book or something. And they do not realize how painstakingly tedious making a comic book is. And you're not going to make a ton of money. There's not a lot of money in comics, right. Unless your comic gets bought by, a big company and becomes a movie and there's merch and all that. Sure. Then there's money, but just making and selling comics, it's almost like the amount of time that you put in for the payback is not really worth it to most people. So it has to be a labor of love. You have to really love what you're doing. And I think that's a big thing that people who go into different industries mess up. And the other thing that I feel like was really important for me, and it's hard to stomach because it means more work, but it really works, is you can't skip any steps, and you have to build the foundation up from ground one. So with Good Charlotte, when our first album came out, we had been a local band, we built it up, had a record label interest in hometown, was successful. And, so we got signed to Sony Records. I was still a senior in high school when we signed our record deal. So, which was just wild, so I didn't have a ton of jobs and stuff to compare to, just, stupid, McDonald's and crap jobs and stuff like that as a teenager. But my first job at 17, almost 18, was getting in a band and going on tour. So, we went on tour that first year. We put the record out, and we probably toured 360 out of the 365 days. We were gone nonstop, and we built it up. And our first single did not hit. The second single didn't hit. We didn't even go gold on the first record. And to a big company like Epic Records, they're putting a lot of money into your record. For you not to go gold, that is a failure. They were but we're yeah, but at the beginning of the album cycle, we were opening up for a lot of big bands as the opener, and meeting new fans. We'd go to the merch booth. We'd get off stage and go straight to the merch booth and meet the fans. And so, no one knew who we were. So it was build the fan base. And by the end of 2 years solid, literally from 2000 to 2002, we toured nonstop to the point where we were doing our own headline shows at the end of the 2 years, and we could sell, 1,000 to 2,000 seats out off of no radio play whatsoever. And the record label was going to drop us. They weren't even going to do a second record. They were like, your first record failed. We put a lot of money into it. It didn't happen. But they were like, we'll let you do one more record and see what happens. So we went back in the studio. We're like, let's make another record. And that record had the anthem, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, Girls and Boys. It was like the record that broke for us, and that record came out. And right away, like we kind of picked up where we left off. We went on Warped Tour, and all of a sudden we get to go up on stage, and like the whole place is packed, and all these bands are looking at us like, how's this band having these crowds? Like our crowds were the biggest crowds there. And like, then all of a sudden MTV started playing it, and everything happened like so fast, But the reason was because we busted our asses for 2 years before that, constantly touring and building up the fan base, so that like, it wasn't like, a one-hit wonder or like some kind of money behind it. The foundation was really strong that you couldn't pull the ground, you couldn't pull anything away from us. Like, even if something didn't hit, we still had the foundation. And that's why we were able, I think, to sustain a career like we had, was because we built it up the right way. So when I started doing comics, I thought, okay, well, I could go to these companies and say, hey, like you could put on the thing, Billy Martin from Good Charlotte makes this book, like, and there's a guaranteed, like a built-in fan base. But I kept thinking like, I can't sell my comic book artist as Good Charlotte because it's not the same thing. Like Good Charlotte fans don't care. So like, I feel like I started from the ground up. I made it a point to never put Good Charlotte on any of the stuff I was doing. It was always Billy Martin. And people would come to me at Comic-Cons, why don't you just put Good Charlotte on the banner behind you? Everyone will come to your table. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, you're stupid. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm stupid. And like, you'd have so much more people coming to talk to you. I'm like, what? So they could ask for like a picture because they love Good Charlotte and then walk away. Like, I want them to come because they like my art, because they like what they're doing. So yeah, the first couple of things I did were like really small stuff for like a pinup in the back of like SLG Publishing, who did, like Jonan Vasquez's early work. I was a huge fan of Jonan. So I did like something like that. And then I did a small 4-page story with, of the cryptics. It was Ben Roman and Steve Niles had this sort of like cartoony thing. So that was my first sort of like published story. I did a 4-page story in that. But for me, it was like starting really small like that and just building up. And I was on like DeviantArt, which was like one of those cool, like MySpace for artists back in the day. And everybody was on DeviantArt. And I was on there posting constantly, getting critiques from other people. And, people would sometimes they'd tear you apart and be like, oh, you suck. Or you draw too much like this person. And I'd be like, okay. And then once in a while, they'd be like, wait a second, are you the dude from Good Charlotte? And I'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, what? So like, I always try to present it as I have to build my art up like I built my band up. Like I need to have a foundation of fans who love my art for my art, not because they like my band. So that at some point, like now Good Charlotte, we don't tour as much as we used to. All of us are married with kids. We don't want to go out and do 300 days a year on tour. Like, no way. Most of the time I'm home not doing Good Charlotte. So like, if Good Charlotte isn't there to bring attention to me, like how do I do it on my own? So that was really important to me, build up my name as an artist and just, have people come to me because they liked it. So I do think there's a lot of parallels in the way. And I learned from the band, what the hard work we put in the band worked. Is like, okay, I need to do the same thing on this side because I've seen the results.
Yeah, people sometimes talk about how Ace came out of nowhere and it was this rocket ship. I'm like, yeah, I read my first show in 1997.
Right. To you, it came out of nowhere, but I've been working hard.
Right. So it took me 20 years to get to the point where we could launch Ace, where you have relationships where Chris Evans will come. Like Chris Evans doesn't just show up somewhere someday. Like
not. Right.
You have to have that. Chris Evans has only done 6 or 7 events since 2015, and they've all been with us. With our family of 7 or 8 people.